Chapter 1 The New Kid. Welcome to Nobles Green, Pennsylvania, the safest town on Earth. The safest town on Earth, thought Daniel. Couldn't sound lamer. Daniel Corrigan and his family saw the sign from their car, just a few miles outside town. When it came into view, Daniel's father honked the horn of their minivan as his mother clapped her hands. Of course, Daniel's baby brother Georgie had to join in, squealing with delight while kicking his plump legs against his car seat. Georgie was only 2 years old, and he always just assumed that everyone was clapping for him, which was usually the case. Daniel's parents clapped when Georgie smiled, or spoke, or even burped. Instead of joining in the applause, Daniel just buried his nose deeper in his book. His mom warned him over and over again that reading in the car would make him sick, but he did it anyway. The Sherlock Holmes mystery, The Hound of the Baskervilles, was one of his favorites. Daniel had a thing for detective stories, and Sherlock Holmes was the best detective ever. Period. While Daniel was completely aware that a middle-aged, pipe-smoking British sleuth was not the typical hero of the average 12-year-old boy, peer pressure meant little to him. He liked spending his time amidst the gaslit streets in horse-drawn carriages, the dangerous arch-criminals, and, of course, trusty sidekick, Dr. Watson. Daniel sometimes wished for a trusty sidekick. All he had was Georgie, who's too young to be much of help in anything. With a sidekick like Georgie, not even Holmes would have solved many crimes, thought Daniel. He would have been too busy clapping all the time. Besides, Daniel understood something that Georgie didn't, that his parents were clapping to get their minds off why they were moving in the first place. They were moving to Nobles Green because that was where Graham lived, and she was very, very sick. For Daniel, the best way to escape that sad fact was to disappear between the covers of a well-read book. The moving truck was waiting for them by the time the family minivan turned into Elm Lane, the Corrigan's family's new address. The truck was backed into the driveway as far as it could reach. It was one of those big tractor-trailer types, and the front cab stuck out onto the street. He didn't understand why they would need all that stuff, even if they were going to be here for a long time. The thought of their old apartment sitting empty back in Philadelphia filled Daniel with a strange sadness. When they pulled up, the movers were already unloading the truck. "Come on, Daniel," said his dad. "We'll let your mom go in and tell your Gram that we're here. I'll give you the grand tour." "Watch yourself getting out of the car, honey," said his mom as she unbuckled Georgie from his car seat. "The oncoming traffic can't see you with that big truck in the way." His dad smiled as he gestured to the giant wraparound porch. "Pretty cool, huh?" Graham's house was 2 stories tall, 3 if you counted the attic, and the whole thing was painted a sort of pale blue with white doors and window frames. "You'll get the attic bedroom. It's got a great view of the mountain, and Georgie will sleep in the one next to ours." Daniel didn't say anything. He just focused on not looking impressed. They ended their tour at the back of the house, next to a set of double doors. They were closed, but Daniel could hear the sound of laughter on the other side. Daniel's father knocked very gently, and a small voice answered from the other side. "Come on in!" His father put his hand on Daniel's shoulder and gave him a reassuring squeeze, then opened the door. The master bedroom was bright and airy. Floor-to-ceiling windows covered 2 of the walls, and the light filtered down through the trees, shining in beams along the dark wood floor. A large 4-poster bed sat in the middle, and there was a soft sofa against one of the windows. Daniel's mother was holding Georgie in her lap, while a woman in a nurse's uniform perched on a stool, reading a magazine. And there, seated on the edge of the bed, was Graham. She looked thinner than he remembered, and her hair seemed whiter, even though it had only been a few months since she'd last visited them in Philadelphia. A small plastic hose extended from her nostrils to a tank around her waist, but she was smiling. His father leaned down and whispered, "It's okay. Why don't you go and give your Gram a hug?" "I know, I look like something out of a movie, hooked up to all these contraptions." "Robogram," she said. Daniel's initial trepidation melted away when he saw Graham wink in his direction. She might not look as strong as he remembered, but she sounded just like her old self. He walked over and wrapped his arms around her. His Graham used to smell of stale perfume and hairspray, but now she smelled of something he didn't recognize, something medicine-y. Daniel could feel the bones of her rib cage through her shirt. She must have read Daniel's mind. "Yeah, I'm as skinny as a bird, aren't I?" It's the food they've got me on. No one around here understands the healing power of fat and grease. But together, maybe we can convince them. What do you say to some burgers and fries?" Daniel smiled as she patted his cheek. "You bet," he answered. "Milkshakes? Well, of course. Milkshakes go without saying." They went on like that for a while, with Graham teasing and making Daniel laugh. It wasn't until Georgie started to get restless that Daniel's mother decided to break up the fun. "Daniel, why don't you take your little brother outside for a bit? Let us talk for a while." Georgie looked up hopefully at Daniel and said, "Ball." So far, Georgie had been slow to talk. He only knew a few dozen words that weren't baby talk, and ball was definitely his favorite. "All right," answered Daniel. "Come on." "Watch the traffic," called Daniel's mother as they turned and walked down the long hallway to the front door. Daniel told Georgie to wait on the porch while he got his brother's favorite toy out of the car. Playing ball with Georgie was really quite simple. It consisted of watching Georgie drop the ball on the ground, squeal, and then pick it up again. If you clapped every now and then, he was happy as could be. When Daniel came back with a ball, a big blue and white striped one, Georgie jumped up and down and started shouting, "Ball! Ball! Ball!" "I think he wants that ball," said a voice behind Daniel. He turned around and found himself face to face with a girl. She was close to his age, with straight dark hair cut short, and holes in the knees of her jeans, a good sign that she was somebody who wasn't afraid to get dirty. As a rule, Daniel didn't put too much stock in girls, but this one looked as if she might be sort of okay. "Hey," he said. The girl didn't say anything right away. She just kind of squinted at him instead. Daniel didn't know why, but he felt suddenly self-conscious. He straightened his shoulders and ran his fingers through his tangled hair. He had a cap on all morning, and his head looked like a matted sandy brown mop. Finally, she spoke up. "If you don't give him that ball pretty soon, I think his head might explode." Daniel had forgotten all about Georgie. His little brother was on his tiptoes, reaching up, trying to bat the ball out of Daniel's hand. Georgie's little face was growing bright red as he strained to grab it. "Oh, shoot," said Daniel. "Sorry, Georgie, here you go." Georgie's giant frown turned into a grin as he took the big blue ball with both hands and plopped it on the ground. He laughed and made a bunch of squawky 2-year-old noises as he chased the ball down the sloping yard. "So is your family moving in with Mrs. Stewart?" asked the girl. "Yeah, she's my gram. She's been sick, so we're here to take care of her," answered Daniel. "You live around here?" The girl shrugged and half pointed over her shoulder. She seemed not to care about much of anything, and that included answering Daniel's questions. "Across the street," she said. Again, there was that uncomfortable silence. Maybe Daniel had been wrong about her. Maybe the dirty jeans were a ruse, and she was just as weird as all the other girls his age. She might even have a doll hidden on her somewhere. Well, she could stand there and stare all day long. He would just play ball with Georgie until she got tired of watching and went home to wherever it was she came from. Across the street somewhere, he supposed. That was when Daniel noticed that Georgie had followed his rolling ball a little too close to the edge of the yard. If Mom saw him playing that far away from the house, she would throw a fit. "Georgie," Daniel called. "Come on back away from the street, okay?" But Georgie wasn't listening. He threw the ball up in the air and laughed as it bounced off the curb and out in front of the truck. Georgie toddled after it, chasing it into the street, not paying attention to the car that was barreling toward him. "Georgie!" Daniel screamed as he raced to his brother, knowing he would never make it in time. As Georgie disappeared onto the street, Daniel heard a loud popping sound as the car came around the corner. "Georgie!" "Ball!" shouted Georgie's voice behind him. Daniel turned to see the girl standing there, holding his little brother in her arms. Georgie was clapping. She set him down and looked past Daniel onto the street. "I think his ball just got run over," she said. "Looks like he'll need a new one." Daniel was so relieved to see his brother safe and in one piece, he couldn't speak. How was that possible? "Well," she sighed, "I'd better get back. It's almost lunchtime." Georgie gave one of his giggly little squeals, and the girl looked down at him and smiled. It was the first time Daniel had seen her do that. "Keep a good eye on your little brother here. I think he likes trouble." And with that, she started to walk away. "Wait!" called Daniel, breathless. His mind was racing, trying to catch up with what had just happened. He needed to stall, to have time to think. Um, I mean, what's your name? I didn't get your name. She squinted back at him again and paused before answering. It's Molly, she said. Molly Lee. See you around, new kid. Then she turned and walked off toward the little yellow house directly across the street.